So a quick note on the use of tone versus volume with when you're working with dogs, right? I was reading something the other night by a trainer I really respect, but I didn't agree with something they wrote. He said that the system they use is all the trainers are not allowed to ever raise their voice with the dogs. Now, I understand what he means. They don't want to use intimidation to help train the dog or whatever. But I don't think that increasing the volume of your voice in certain contexts necessarily translates to intimidation with a dog. Sometimes, just like with a correction, right? Sometimes with the dog, say they hit their nose in something, for instance. People make this mistake with the e-collars all the time. They'll try to correct the dog out of it with the e-collar. The dog won't feel it because they're so entranced with whatever they have their nose in. It's like this sensory explosion. So you have to dial up the e-collar, and a lot of people think, well, my dog must be a really crazy, tough dog because I had to use the e-collar in that context higher. In fact, you shouldn't really use the e-collar for that to begin with, but people do this all the time. And they think the setting's higher, so they make that mistake. When in reality, it should be much lower. It's just in that one context, it needed a little boost to snap the dog out of it. Same could be said for a whole number of different contexts in which you have to correct. Well, the same is true with volume of your voice. Sometimes for them to hear you, you have to raise your voice, but you don't change the tone. The tone is still businesslike. It's from your diaphragm. It's very calm but assertive. It's just louder. Okay, but it's not no. That's different. There's no and there's no. No. Raise your voice, but it's still just business. It's not getting personal still. And it's to snap them out of it because they're so involved in whatever they're doing. Now, typically when I'm louder, it's when I have dogs playing off leash, like these two bozos, right? And I'll be honest here. If I ever do lean on, in certain instances where if I have to be a bit of a bully in any particular circumstance, it's when dogs are playing off leash, which this is the end point of a pretty methodical, lengthy process of introduction, right? And not all dogs get to do it, but it's still inherently dangerous. This is why I think dog parks should be illegal. But you have to be extremely assertive, I think, in this context. Maybe not with these two. Easy meal. But if I have to step in and no, just to startle them, I'll do it. Pack walks too, which I don't like pack walks, but I think they have a limited use in certain contexts. You're dealing with groups of dogs. Sometimes I feel like it may be necessary occasionally to be extremely assertive, way more than average, just as a preventative measure, because there are safety issues involved. Otherwise, you could just have everyone muzzled, but when you do that, the dogs are aware of the muzzle, and they don't really learn anything, that's just my take. It was actually Mike DeBruzzo, Canine One guy. More experienced than I am. He's probably right. You know what I mean? I don't know, but that was a slight point of disagreement. Something I read on one of his blogs. Great trainer, but I feel like there's a difference between tone and volume in communicating with dogs, and it's important to remember that. You can elevate the volume a little bit, but the tone has to remain neutral. It's calm and assertive, okay, and there's a difference between the two. So that's my take on that. But really keep language minimal with dogs as much as possible, because they don't speak English, but they do speak tone. So watch your tone.